Hello, are people here? Can you hear me properly? Why do people always go live when you have to go? Yeah, I must admit, I miss so many streams. Always end up, to be honest, I always end up coming into them just as they finish, which is always a bit annoying. So how is everybody? All three people at the moment? My coffee's starting to go cold. Right, what we're going to do in this one is we're going to have a quick look at this Quantel manual that I just picked up. I picked this up from a chap that I met last week, and he had a big pile of Quantel stuff, and he had this there, and I went, oh, that looks interesting. So I picked it up, brought it home. We'll have a quick look through this, and we can do a bit of chat. I've got a few other things to talk about as well. You can see my topics on the other side. So while we're sort of browsing through this this service manual for the Quantel Harry, I'll go through some of these things, which consist of a Quantel Hal, which I've got just down here, which is from the Jim Austin Computer Collection. I've got another Quantel paint box from Vintage Radio that I'm going to be looking at, and I've got a really interesting project with the project called Adapt, which is part of the Royal Holloway University London, and so I'll tell you all about that. And there's a few other things. We have a file converter for Quantel stuff. Got an update on the Pioneer amp that I was repairing, because I didn't actually manage to order the capacitors. And I've got a load of Quantel paintbox pictures on Flickr that I've put up, so I'll give you a link to that as well. How's the stream doing? 3 people. Oh, we can do better than that, can't we? So, the Quantel Harry then. A really interesting bit of kit. Came out shortly after the Quantel paint box. Well, not shortly after. The Quantel paint box was 1982, and the Quantel Harry was 1986, 87-ish, it seems. And what it does is it does non-linear editing. It was the world's first system to do a non-linear video editing. So this is the first time they actually managed to record and manipulate real-time video, and it was a world first. So we'll have a quick look through. This one is literally just a service manual. I don't have any user documentation or anything, unfortunately, but we have a couple of bits of documentation here. You're probably not going to see it. It's just a white screen. You're probably not going to be able to really see this too much. Let's see if we can just knock the brightness down a bit. Let's see if that helps a bit. Yeah, we've got a few drawings here. This one looks like it might have been part of an installation at ITN. I'm not sure where that would have been, but we've got a title down on the bottom here called ITN Harry Suites. So no idea where that would have been. So it looks like we've got a sort of a proposal diagram of two Quantel Harry systems that were installed at ITN. There's a date on here, sort of last part of 1990. Right. So, quick look through here, techie data, all that. I think that is just not much at all. So, introduction. So it says the Harry is a broadcast digital cell recording system which processes broadcasted specification video. This allows a moving television picture to sequence to be stored, processed and replayed without degradation. The digital cell recorder is a real-time system which can record live pictures, process and edit them, then replay them at video rate. It's completely compatible with the Quantel DPB 7000 paint box. To provide facility for full frame cell animation, which is rotoscoping. So yeah, as I said, this is the world's first non-linear editing system. Morning, yes. So yeah, how on earth did they do it? Because if we, on the Quantel paint box, the hard disk that they were using on that, they max out at about 1 megabyte per second, and of course that is nowhere near enough to be able to record real-time video. So once we get into this, we'll start to realise how they actually did it, and it's a bit bonkers, to be honest, as a lot of stuff is with Quantel. We've got some of the specifications and stuff in here. Digital coding system. So what it seems to do is record all the video digitally and then record it to hard disks. And it looks, and it's going to be SDI. I think Quantel were pretty instrumental in the sort of development of SDI. So it's going to be what, 270 megabits per second. So got some drawings. Obviously not really going to be able to see that because my webcam is not very good. There's some better drawings deeper in actually. Tablet, keyboard, and some more information. Come on. Environmental conditions, airflow, unpacking. So we got the Harry unit, rather boring picture there. A PTD M2350A disk drive. Crate assembly, disk drive units. I'm going to flick through this fairly quickly because there is a lot in this book. Packing diagram. Ah, here we are. Give you an idea of what we're actually dealing with. What's the year? The manual is dated between 1986 and 1987. There's quite a few different dates in here. So I believe the Harry was introduced in 1986. So yeah, 30 odd years ago. So that is a diagram of the Harry system. So we've got 4. These are 19-inch racks. I should point out. So we've got four large hard disks in one rack, and then we've got Quantel Core, which is a digital effects system. Next one down, we've got a Quantel paint box, and then that's the actual Harry system itself, and then we've got the power supply for the Harry. So that's at the bottom. Yes, it looks like it uses 4 large hard disks. These are, I believe they're 14-inch Winchester drives. Cabinets and drawings and various bits in here. Cable clamps onto the back of the Harry unit. And we've got a bit more drawing. Yes, I believe they did stripe. It's quite interesting how they did it. You might start to get an idea. Also start looking at the connection diagrams. So this is the back of the units. We've got the 4 hard disks. Now they describe these as top left, top right, bottom left, and bottom right. And then we've got the Core, the paint box, and the Harry. You can see the connection going out to the hard disks there, and we've got a power supply in the bottom with a disk power up sequence controller. So I'm not really going to be able to give you a good shot of the drawings, unfortunately. Yeah, TV was big business back then, much bigger than, well, in a way it was bigger then. It was certainly had, there was no competition from the internet back then to watch TV. So if you watched TV, you watched it on, well, here in the UK we had BBC, the ITV networks, and Channel 4, and that was the lot. So yeah, there was huge money to be made in it. Obviously not a few of the BBC. Control system installation. So it's talking about the connection to the tablets. Yeah, I've no idea how much this would have cost, to be honest. I mean, from what I understand, the Quantel paint box, which is pull that out to one side. So the paint box, which is just this part here, that was £120,000 when it first came out. So I've no idea how much the Harry system cost. Enormous amounts of money. Connecting Core to Harry. The Quantel DPE 5800 Core system can be connected digitally to the Harry system. This allows processing of digital video from the Harry system using Core production effects. So obviously the Core is a effects system, and then we have Harry, a standard DPB 7000 paintbox system can be modified to connect digitally to the Harry system. This allows full frame, cell animation or rotoscope effects to be produced on the Harry system. Details of modifications required for the paintbox, blah blah blah. Magnetic tape streamer. The Cypher M990 GCR magnetic tape unit can be connected to the Harry system to provide picture backup for archiving or bulk storage. Doesn't actually say how much you can save on it. And there's the tape system. Drawing of. Specifications for unformatted hard drive size. I haven't seen any, but the model number of the drive is mentioned later on. So I'll make a point of letting you know exactly what model hard disk it is when I come across it. I think they were 14-inch. From what I understand, they were 14-inch platters. So I'm starting to get a little bit more information here. Input section, system overview. Yeah. Input section, coded video from the rear panel. It's passed to the ADC card where it's clamped and separated into luminance, chrominance signals prior to digitizing. Data paths, IO expander units. IO expander mounted in the rear of the unit gives the selection of 4 digital video inputs, 2 EBU601, which is essentially SDI, and 2 Quantel digital inputs. I'm not entirely sure what they are. Input timing. Input timing and clock signals for the system are generated by the input timing card. And a phase lock to the output locking reference video. Blah blah blah. Yeah. A little bit too much detail just at the moment. Disk access. The parallel transfer drives used by the system are controlled by the disk controller card via the 4 individual bus connections. Data is transferred via the 4 individual radial connections in 5 serial lines, which correspond to the disk's 5 parallel heads. Conversion between this format and the 8-bit parallel format used throughout the system is carried out by the disk interface card. So that sounds like these drives actually give you direct access to all of the heads at the same time, rather than using having the entire disk made up into one contiguous block that you access through a single interface. So yeah, it looks like they might be able to write the each of those 4 hard disks in 5 parallel stripes, which is pretty mad. Output section, output timing. Yeah, there's going to be a lot of analog video stuff going on here, of course. System block diagram. So we've got top left satellite, top right satellite, bottom left, bottom right, and various bits, and then we have 4 hard disks shown here. You're not going to be able to see these, unfortunately. So we've got a disk interface card going to each hard disk, and a store on each one. Lots of mux and demuxes, multiplexers and various things going on. a simplified block diagram. So we've got inputs, RGB, YUV, IO expander. That's the thing that gives you the digital inputs. I just remember that. Input switch, codecs, computer control. Somebody's been making notes on here. These bits here aren't printed, though somebody's drawn those in pen. So computer control, so that's obviously the CPU part. We've got the inputs, outputs, and disk drives. So from there, we've got two mux demuxes, and the first one takes the Y data, which is the luminance, and splits it into two, and then writes that to two of the hard disks, so the top left and top right, and then the U and V content are split into two and written to the bottom left and bottom right hard disks. So yeah, they're splitting this up into YUV. So the luminance, which always needs more resolution, is written to the first two hard disks, and then the colour information is split across the bottom two. CPU card. CPU card is a 68010 base microprocessor with a floating point processor. Card also carries various interfacing circuitry in the microprocessor's memory. The system operating software is held in the RAM-ROM card, which is loaded into the CPU RAM on power up or system reset. Audio processor card. So it can do audio as well. The function of the audio processor card is to provide audio scratch track for the system. This is used to store the audio track associated with a particular video clip. The card processes audio signal in digital form, allowing up to 120 seconds to be stored in the 1 megabit DRAM. How times have changed, eh? I would love to be able to scan this book in, but unfortunately there's a lot of it which is on A3 sheets, and I don't have a scanner big enough to be able to scan those. Routine maintenance. Yeah, it's basically video alignment and air filters. Video alignment, diagnostics facilities. Hardware test facilities include built-in digital test signals, which allow the decoder and coder circuitry to be checked. Built-in error detecting hardware, which allows the video data path and store errors to be quickly isolated. Blah blah blah. Software diagnostics, computer self-test, video and disk hardware tests, onboard test software. Well, that's interesting. CPU ROSU. I wasn't aware of the CMX 600. Could it actually do real-time video, or was it just editing but Oh, I don't know. Interesting, I'll have to look that up. There's probably some little caveat to the claim that it's the world's first non-linear editing system. It's probably like the world's first commercial non-linear editing system or something like that. Video and disk hardware tests. Satellite stores can only be written or read, not both at the same time. Diagnostics quick reference guide. So we're starting to get a bit into the detail of some of the actual cards in the system. CIO card, CPU card, Chroma processor card. I think it's talking about all the little switches and settings that are on each of the cards. Let's get that into shot for you. Got little rotary settings and displays on the edge of the card. Disk controller card, store address card, disk interface card, MUX, DMUX card, input switch card, IO store control card, RGB output card, timecode card, RGB input, IO timing, cable and socket details, all the pinouts for the sockets. Output channels, input channels, SMD bus. These are a 60-way ribbon connector which pass data to the top right, top left, bottom right and bottom left disk drives. Disk interface card in each satellite section of the Harry crate provides the appropriate parallel data for its disk drive. We've got pinouts of all the cables, computer SCSI, used to connect the SCSI compatible equipment, the Cipher magnetic tape reader to the Harry system and for development and test purposes. So it looks like they had SCSI as well as the SMD drives. System interconnection diagram. Power supply circuit. Isn't it amazing how all this tech that you buy back then came with so much technical information? Circuit display. I'm sure I've seen more detail on that hard disk. Because we're on to circuit descriptions now. Let's just see if I've missed something. The model number of that hard disk. Sure, I saw something previously about the model of the hard disk. Mounting disk drives. Ah, there we are. It is a M2350A, and I'd imagine that is a variation on the Fujitsu Eagle drive. Fujitsu M2350A specifically. The cheesy top of the pops effects. I'm not even sure that was a Quantel thing. It might have been. It's a different kind of effects. That's like a real-time effects thing that they use on top of the pops, and it was mostly analog a lot of the time. Quantel did have one that could do that kind of thing, but I don't know if the BBC actually used it on top of the pops. It was, what was the model number? It's the DPE 5000, I think. Just trying to see if I can get some information on there. DPE, and there we go. Let me just. So we've got a reference to the drive model here in, what's it in? Computer World, 22nd of September 1986. Storage conservation. Utilising the Fujitsu M2350A PTD drives, transfer data to and from the M2350A via 5 parallel channels, each at 1.86 megabits per second transfer rate. So it's not really about the Fujitsu drive itself, it's about another system that uses it, but 1.86 megabits per second, so uh, 1.8 times 5 times 4. That gives us a total of 36 megabits per second. Which doesn't sound enough, to be honest, but I don't know, maybe they're doing something else. Is there anything else? It's just a list. Okay. Anyway, it's yeah, about 1.8 megabits per second for those drives per channel. Search for Magnus Johansson says search for Quantel Harry Suite demo on Vimeo. I shall do that. This is a video that I've not seen before. Yeah, lots of effects layers and compositing stuff going on there, isn't there? Very 1980s, isn't it? Some pretty advanced effects going on there, isn't there? I'll skip them. I'm not going to watch all of this. Wow. Actually, there's a Michael Jackson video, isn't there? That's this reminds me of a little bit. Leave Me Alone. Was that done on the Harry?
A magic mirror effect, and the bottle. The basic shape of the bottle was defined using the contour package, and starlight was used for three-dimensional highlighting. Shadows and reflections were synthesized and added to complete the illusion. Then Harry's powerful picture sequencing and editing capabilities were used to bring this eye-catching optical effect to life.
Actually talking about how the system works. Let's just skip back a little bit.
The closing scene of the doll. The piece you've just seen was produced entirely within the Quantel Harry suite. Most of the material was shot on 35mm film. Many of the scenes were shot against a blue screen for later background keying in Harry. After processing and printing, the film was transferred digitally from Telecine to a D1 component digital videotape recorder.
D1, there's a machine I wouldn't mind taking to pieces. I bet they're lovely inside. Fantastic bit of engineering in there, I bet.
Which were put directly into Harry using Steadygate. Once inside the Harry suite, the material was processed, not only by Harry, but also by the Quantel Paintbox, Encore, and Mirage, using the contour shaping package and Starlight. When all the processing was completed, the final results were output to a D1 DVTR. From this master format, it was an easy task to generate pristine quality copies in a variety of formats, including 1-inch C format, Betacam SP, and VHS. Although D1 was chosen as the master format for this production, it should be noted that excellent results can also be produced using analog component machines such as Betacam SP and M2 as the mastering medium. But now, let's have a look at some of the techniques used in this piece.
Yeah, show us how it's done. Come on.
This sequence shows how one scene progressed from the original blue screen shot through the background keying process in Harry. Clever use of Harry's matte generation and keying was also used to conceal and reveal the objects on the table at the right times, and to put the original blue screen sequence onto the TV screen in the background. Finally, Paintbox was used to add magical sparkle effects frame by frame.
Frame by frame, so that's rotoscoping then. Just drawing it in manually.
The creation of shadows was made much easier by using Encore. After creating mattes of the object which was to cast the shadow, Encore's corner pinning feature quickly gave the correct perspective to the mats, and the final composite image was keyed together in Harry, including the background, the foreground object, and a composite shadow cast in 2 planes, against the floor and the wall. Mirage was used to create a Venetian blind background effect, a magic mirror effect, and the bottle. The basic shape of the bottle was defined using the contour package, and starlight was used for 3-dimensional highlighting. Shadows and reflections were synthesized
God,
and added to
I wonder if
complete
there's
the
any
illusion.
of these systems left in the
Then
world,
Harry's powerful
or whether they've
picture
all been
sequencing and
destroyed.
editing capabilities were used to bring this eye-catching optical effect to life. Finally, the closing scene of the doll's house is worth more than a second look. Each room in the doll's house had a different object from a separate blue screen shot keyed into it. Each shot was resized and repositioned in turn using Encore before Harry's matting and keying was used to create a composite image.
It's a shame they're not really showing much of the user interface and how they actually did it
correct conceal reveal
on the actual system.
And the effect was complete. These are just a few illustrations of the creative power of the Harry suite. Note how successive layers were built up, one at a time. In the final doll's house scene, about 200 separate images were overlaid to produce the final sequence.
I wonder how long it
There's no need for a multi-level
took them
simultaneous
to
playback,
actually make
which only
that.
confuses the production process. Many of the effects you've seen in this production would either have taken much longer to achieve in a conventional edit suite, or would simply not have been possible. The Harry suite is the choice of creative producers worldwide, and a growing number of broadcasters are finding
Yeah, that's a really interesting
not just
demo.
sparkling in-house
So this really
promotion,
was part of
but as the long-term answer to the problems of
a massive
processing
bit
and
of
editing
kit.
the increasing volume of component material in SP or M2 formats. Component digital processing, together with true random access operation from a
How
single
much did it
easy-to-use
cost?
control
Tell us
station,
how much it
gives
cost.
Harry owners the fastest possible return for the minimum capital outlay.
So we have a size
The
on the
Harry
discs,
suite from Quantel,
474
where
megabytes. That's
become
quite
reality.
a bit more than what I thought it was going to be, actually. Why has it suddenly got loud? Turn that down. 474 megs, 6 platters, 5 channels. Yeah, because I think this one of the platters is used as a servo platter. That'll probably be the same as the what is it called? The 2940 drive. I can't remember now. The one that's used on the Quantel paint box is 14-inch, but one of the platters is used as a servo alignment head positioning platter. £187. Yes, they're not going to be light at all. I've lifted the. Let's just stop that. I've lifted up those Winchester drives before, and they are enormously heavy. I think it's about 45 kilos, and that's ignoring the power supply, which is not part of the actual drive. Speaking of which, getting on to sort of chatting about some stuff that's going on, the hard disk from my Quantel paint box, the original one, is currently at the Jim Austin Computer Collection. I took it up there a few weeks ago, well, no, it was last week, and dropped it off, and they are going to try and read the contents of that drive. So after all these years, after all the stuff that disk has been through, we might actually, you never know, be able to get some data off it. So they're going to be plugging that into a Sun system, and hopefully going to be trying to read it, which would be rather cool if we can get some images off that old drive. And it might mean we'll make some progress on getting that original Quantel paint box restored, which of course is the original DPB 7000. Let's just turn that display off. Let's so we've got a reference guide as well now. Thank you, CP Rosso. Let's just see if we can grab that. Oh, yeah, put the dot in, that would help. Thank you for that, it's just downloading now. Fujitsu America. So we've got the sort of normal size drives. Where are the Winchesters? I think I've missed them. So 3.5 inch, 5.25 inch, 8 inch, 8 inch backmount kits. Parallel transfer disk drives. Excellent. C Pros U. Okay, got you. No problem. I will certainly save that. Disk 6. That 1.8 megabits per second that they mentioned in that article we saw just then is wrong, because the 5 channel is 9.2. Anyway. The reason why I couldn't read that original paintbox disc is because the paintbox doesn't actually work. So we had no way of reading it, and to be honest we didn't know even if the drive is working, to be fair. Yeah, because the paintbox and the drive could be suspect. You could spend hours and hours and hours just getting absolutely nowhere. And unfortunately the bearing in that drive is a bit iffy. So didn't really want to run the drive without actually making any progress with it. So I just had it in storage until last week when I dropped it up to them, because at least they've got working systems that they can plug it onto, and they can either say yes, we're getting data off it, or no, we can't, the drive is toast. Is that bytes or bits? Yes, good question. If it's a capital B, then it should be bytes, shouldn't it? Whereas a lowercase b would be bits. Yeah, because the capacity, where's it gone? Drive capacity unformatted, 474 MB, and the B is in caps. If it's in lowercase, then that should be bits. So that should be 9.2 megabytes per second, which is quite impressive for 1986. So 9.2 let's call it 9.3 megabytes per second times 4, 37 megabytes per second, which is almost bang on. Well, actually, it's just a bit over what they needed to do to record standard Rec 601 video, which is 270 megabits per second, which is 33 megabytes per second. So anyway, I'm not sure how much more detail I can really go into without just going through all the details of the cards in this. Basically what we have now is circuit descriptions for every single card in the system. So we have computer input output card, and we have a circuit description for it. We have a block diagram. This is very, very similar to the information you get with the old Quantel paint box as well. So you get a circuit description, a block diagram, an actual layout of the PCB showing you the component locations, and a full schematic. In this case, two pages of schematics, and we should have that for every single card in the system, which is really quite cool. Certainly makes for good bedtime reading. So this is the CPU card, static RAM, real-time clock, dynamic RAM, floating point processor, block diagram, component layouts, schematics. They only just fitted that on there, didn't they? So while I'm sort of flicking through some of these, I'll probably have a chat about the other things that I wanted to talk about as well in this this stream. So as I said, I visited the Jim Austin computer collection last week when I dropped off that drive. I spent pretty much all day there. It's an absolutely remarkable place. If you want to know a bit more about it, if you just Google for Jim Austin computer collection, you will find his website. He's got Britain's largest personal computer collection, and it is immense. I would want to know how they are recording the video to disc. Is it possible they could record analog video or use some type of A to D? If they used A to D, I wonder how many lines of video it held. I can answer this one pretty easily. It is digital, and they will be basically recording the SDI data. So what would have been serial digital video, if you look up SDI, it's a pretty well-known standard, Rec 601. They will just be recording that straight to the hard disk, I bet you any money, because that's pretty much what they do with the RAM recorder, which I've got down here. So it is recorded digitally. Lines of video, Rec 601 says it's 720 by 576 for PAL, and for NTSC it's 720 by 488. And that will be 16-bit YUV. Even though the SDI Rec 601 standards are either 8 or 10 bits, I don't think Quantel do that. I think it's 16-bit, but I'm not sure actually. I know that's true for the later paint boxes, but it might not be the case for these earlier systems. Yeah, I was saying about Jim Austin's computer collection. It's an absolutely remarkable place. I'm definitely be going back because I need to go and pick up this paint box disc when they finish trying to read stuff off it. But yeah, remarkable place. If you're in the UK and you want to have a geeky day out, drop in an email and see if you can arrange to go and see it. It has many Cray systems there. It's really quite impressive. I touched my first Cray, which is quite cool. Yeah, it's up in Yorkshire, so yeah, it is a bit of a drive if you're down south somewhere, but thankfully I'm south of Manchester, so it only took a couple of hours to get over there. Just got more block diagrams in here. So one of the other reasons why I went up to the Jim Austin collection was because he mentioned he had a Quantel Hal, and he wants to know whether it could be made to work, and I offered to try and help, basically. So I picked up a Quantel Hal, which I have down here. I might put this away and actually show you if you want. I can stick it on here and give you a quick look at it. So the Quantel Hal is a compositing system. I think it's really what the Harry was. It's like a newer version of Harry, just in a much smaller box and more compact. Not quite sure if it's so advanced, but yeah, it was a much later system based on the V series, so I'm going to try and get that working. Now the problem is that Jim only had the actual chassis itself. There was no disk arrays, no tablet, no keyboard or anything, so I'm going to have to sort of try and get some other bits together to try and get that operational. PAL Chroma processor card. See if we can find some of the A to D stuff, maybe we might actually be able to work out how many bits of data they're actually storing in the YUV. Chroma filter. Does the Hal say, I'm sorry Dave? I guess it could. Yeah, I'm not quite sure why it's called Hal. Maybe it's a reference to 2001, could well be. I wouldn't be surprised, knowing the Quantel like to have funny references to things in their products. Like the code name for the V series systems, I believe, was called Mavis, and that's a reference to Mavis from Coronation Street, which is kind of funny. Yeah. Actually, I'll tell you what. Let's. Run out of coffee. I don't think I'm going to see that much more in this. If anybody's got any questions, just throw them in the comments, and I can. I should be able to look it up. I think we'll put that away because I think we've pretty much learnt that the Harry system was a pretty advanced system. So where does this go? Page 35. If anybody's got any extra questions about this, put them in the comments and I'll dig it out in a sec. I can just check something if you want. What I'll do. Now, if you hear me scream, shout, fall over, then I've dropped it. Right, yeah, as you can tell, it's big. I'm just going to have to reposition the camera. So a Quantel Hal. It'll be interesting to see if we can get this working. Obviously, it doesn't belong to me, but I'm going to hopefully try and get it working. Another question is doing hardware abstraction. Yeah. So this is all based on the V series, from what I know. But yeah, this does look like it could be a goer, to be honest. I've powered it up, and the system nearly boots, but it crashes part way through, and I think that's because it's expecting to find a disk drive array system which plugs on the back of it, which provides all the storage for the video. So I think because that's not there, then it basically gives up and crashes. So we've got digital outputs in the top here, big power supply, and all the cards are in here. So it could be interesting to see whether we can make this work and actually see what it actually does. But unfortunately, it's just a big beast, because the disk drives that go with this are as big as this chassis. So it's not the sort of thing that's sort of small and compact that you can put away. Quickly take these off for you so you can see. Yes, I've managed to recover all of the software off this, so that I've got a backup of that. To be honest, I actually have a copy of the software for the HAL on MO disk as well anyway, so that's not a problem. But actually, is this the right side? I think I'm taking off the wrong side here. But I've also, from this, I've managed to recover all of the pictures that were stored on it, and it looks like it was actually, well, I've taken off the wrong side. I've recovered all of the pictures that were stored on these two hard disks. This is the main system disk, and that is the shared disk. So although there's no video stored on this, because that would have been on the disk arrays, which plug in on a port just on there, the sort of plain static images are actually stored on these disks. So I managed to recover all of those, and that was one of the things I was going to mention in this stream, that I recovered them all and put them on Flickr. So it looks like this was actually used at the BBC in their news department. Yes, there is an MO drive on the front here. Unfortunately, that doesn't work, but it's not a big problem, to be honest. PAL passwords, yes, but thankfully I managed to recover them off the system disk, so I have the passwords for this machine, so that won't really be a problem for this one. It's really just trying to figure out how everything connects up and and get the system booting. But you can see that we've got system CPU boards just like the other V series systems, but obviously there's a lot more cards in this because it does real-time video. So let's pop this back. I don't really want this taking up my desk all the time. So yeah, I was saying about the Flickr page. So if you Google for Flickr and Dexter's Lab 2010, not 13, you'll find my Flickr page. I'll put a link in the video description as well, but I haven't actually done that yet. So, but in there you'll be able to find all the pictures that were on this machine, and there was 1,500 of them. Now I can't get this front panel back on. There we go. Eekpie, yes, I would agree with you there. Your comment saying that you know, finding a Quantel system that's got actually something that you saw on TV at the time is quite an appealing thing, to be honest. You suddenly find you might have something that actually used to create the graphics that you actually saw. I think that is part of the appeal, to be honest. Whether or not we'll actually find anything, but there was certainly, on this system, there was a lot of pictures from BBC News. There's some News 24 stuff. A lot of it is just sort of weird random pictures, to be honest. As I said, the HAL mainly did video anyway, so all the video would have been stored on the disk arrays, which obviously departed company from this over the years. Put these screws back in here before I forget them. What the comments doing? So the paint box's protection is almost as draconian as some of IBM's mainframe systems. It really makes the hassle for computer restorers these days to keep these systems running. Yes, absolutely, I totally agree. There's so many times then people created systems and then it was one of those things, you get an error and it just says, please call your local service representative. Well, that's no use now when you're trying to restore something that's 20 or 30 years old. How it goes on. That's it. I've got to lift it up again. Right. Late enough for News 24, started in 1998. Yes, there's definitely some News 24 stuff on it. Let me see if I can actually get the link. Put that in the description. Not quite sure how you save this stuff. Right, so the link to my Flickr page should be in the video description. So what else is on my list of stuff to talk about? So we've done the Harry, the Hal, Quantel Paintbox Vintage Radio. Yes, now this came about through the next thing I want to talk about, which is the Adapt project, but I'll talk about that in a sec. So I've got another Quantel Paintbox, a V-series system that I'm hopefully going to try and fix for somebody. It's looking fairly promising at the moment, but it did burst into flame when I turned it on. We had another failure of the IEC socket. Yeah, that went fizz bang pop, and I also had some exploding tantalums as well. So that's work in progress at the moment. Not sure if I'll film that one. Do people want to see me fixing more of these Quantel paintbooks? I know I'm doing quite a lot of Quantel stuff at the moment. I don't want to end up overloading everybody with Quantel stuff. Oh, thank you. I will take a look at that CMX 600. Do that now. It's not coming back with anything for me. Oh, index.htm. There we are. Yeah, I'm not quite sure. I'll have to have a look for that. Yes, there's some interesting pictures on the Flickr page for the. If you go into albums, there's a couple of that I've just created. You've got the BBC News Quantel Hal files. Let's just pop this on a display. So these are all the pictures from that Hal system. As I said, there's tons and tons and tons in there. Various just random pictures and all sorts of stuff. Graphics that they would have been using in the news programs. None of it's particularly interesting. We've got some news round stuff. I don't think any of it's particularly interesting, but it's, I don't know. It's sort of interesting. And from this Quantel paintbox that I'm just fixing up for vintageradio.co.uk, it turned out that system was from Tyne Tees TV, and that was full of images as well. I think there was about 378, yeah, 378 pictures on there. Right, so yeah, I'm working on that Quantel paint box, so hopefully that'll be up and running soon. I've just ordered a new IEC socket for it, which I'm just waiting for because I don't have any here. Once that arrives, I can wire it in and turn it on, and we'll see what happens. So the other thing, Jeremy, look at the comments. Enthusiasm is contagious. Yeah, I'm fine. Yeah, trouble is everybody be getting all nerdy and geeky about Quantel paint boxes. I'm not sure if it's a good thing. Did I see Jeremy Clarkson? Yes, you probably did. I'm sure there was a Jeremy Clarkson picture in there somewhere. Yeah, there's all sorts of stuff, lots and lots. So the ADAPT project, I'll just explain what this is all about. It is Quantel related. So the ADAPT project is an EU funded research program about TV production techniques that sort of date back from the beginning of TV all the way up to the present day. They have a website, adapttvhistory.org.uk, and what they do is they recreate original production environments and bring in people that used to work in that environment in that era, and they reintroduce people back to their old technology and see how they feel about it, how they reminisce about how they used to use it, how it works, and all that sort of stuff. And what they're going to be doing in a few weeks' time is filming a sequence on digital video and editing in the 1980s and 1990s. So from that, they contacted me and asked if I could loan them my Quantel paint box and my Quantel camcorder, which I agreed to. And they're going to be having my paint box and camcorder for 4 days of filming. They're going to have a couple of professional paint box artists come in and play with my paint box, try and explain how it all works and how they used to recreate all of the old effects and stuff like that. So the sort of stuff that you saw on that Harry video earlier, although it won't be quite so advanced with my system because it's not up to that standard, but I'm sure they'll be able to detail a lot of the techniques and tricks that paintbox artists used to sort of create the graphics of the 1980s and 1990s, which is really quite cool. So I'll be there with them for 2 days filming, which is really going to be quite an experience. Really looking forward to it, to be honest. Actually being able to talk to the people who actually used to use the Quantel paint box back in the day. The artist, one of the artists, used to use the classic paint box. So that'll be the first time I've ever met anybody who's used the classic paint box. So yeah, could be really exciting that. So that's going to be happening middle of March. So I'll keep you updated on that. And the other good thing is they're going to provide me with all of the footage that they create from it. So that'll be really interesting to see, and I can use that freely on my own channel. So I'll certainly do a feature video detailing all the stuff that went on. But if you have a look at their website, it's really quite interesting, and they do have a page where they've got videos. Where is it? Links and resources, I think. No, it's on blog. I can't remember where it was now. They had a section outside broadcast promo. Where are the videos? I'm sure they had a section on here for videos. Ah, there we are. videos. So I think they're all on Vimeo, but they sort of go back and look at some of the techniques that were used, and they recreate the original studios, and it's all functional equipment. So if you want to go and see how they did telecine conversions, there's a good half-hour on these two videos you can go and look up, and film cameras, studios, film processing. So that is going to be really cool. I'll keep you all updated on what happens with that. We're just sort of trying to get all the fine details worked out. So the next thing is the Quantel VPB file converter. So I just want to shout out to John Donovan for writing this. He's got it on GitHub, and it's just here. VPB converter. So what he's done with looking at some of the pictures, the file formats that I've actually taken off these Quantel paint boxes, he's actually started to write a program that can convert Windows bitmaps into the Quantel VPB format, so I can copy those onto the paint box. Because previously all I could do was copy the image off and read them on my PC. I couldn't get any images onto the paint box. So that means we can convert files and put them on the paint box. So yeah, thanks John for that. It works a treat. If anybody wants to get involved and help out or do anything, then it's all there on GitHub. Right, capacitors for Pioneer amp repair. Yeah, a few of you might remember a video I did. Was it before Christmas? I think it might have been. Where I had some bad capacitors. Let's just turn that off. Yeah, remember these that I took out of that Pioneer amp. I went to order them. They were out of stock, and they've been on back order ever since. So that's why that amplifier hasn't been fixed yet. I'm just waiting to buy the capacitors. So when they finally turn up, I will do a video refitting those. Back to the comments. Yes, Eekpie says that's excellent. Wonder what magic they'll make. Yes, I have no idea what they're really going to be showing. Could be really interesting. Certainly, I'll be learning a lot during the period that I'll be there watching them film it all. And pack some spare parts in case of magic smoke release. Yes, unfortunately, yeah, that is a distinct possibility. But the good thing is that I do play around with my paint boxes quite often, and it does mean that they're on quite a lot, and I think it's always better to have these systems on than sat there doing nothing. So they've proven pretty reliable so far. I can literally just turn it on and it works. So hopefully that will be the case when it's down there on set, although Sod's Law I'm sure will intervene and something will break just as we're trying to start filming. But yeah, I'll certainly be taking some spares and screwdrivers and a soldering iron just in case. Time team with get in the way, Baldrick. What are you referring to there? I'm not quite sure. Eekpie, is that a picture you've seen in those Flickr? No, those Flickr albums by any chance or something? Not sure. So yes, I think we've pretty much covered everything from here, haven't we? So we've had a look at the Quantel Harry. It's a shame I don't really have one to play with, but then I don't really have the room for it. We've looked at the Quantel Hal. A little aside note from that, the vintageradio.co.uk, he has a huge amount of Quantel stuff. He has a Hal himself, along with a Henry, which is a later system, and he's got an edit box as well. None of it works at the moment, but yeah, we're going to look at seeing what we can bring back to life. We talked about the Adapt project, file converter, and the Pioneer amps. So I think we're getting pretty much to the end of the stream, I think, unless anybody's got anything particular they want to ask or mention. We're pretty quiet. Okay. Yeah, I know what you mean about Tony Robinson. Yeah, he will always be Baldrick. Oh, you see some time team stuff. Okay. Well, it's time team's Channel 4, isn't it? Eight-inch floppy disks. What about the 8-inch floppy disks? Are they still a mystery? Yes, well, kind of. We did a bit of research with them. I've got the drive down here still. I started trying to image them with a cryoflux. I've got one around here somewhere. A lot of the disks. Actually, I'll tell you what. Let me go and get them. Give me a second. So I've just grabbed one box. So these are the 8-inch floppy disks that came with the original paint box. And I tried to read them just with a normal disk imager and couldn't really get anything off them, so we started to try and use a cryoflux. But even the cryoflux was struggling to get anything reasonable off them, unfortunately. So there was a bit of discussion on the cryoflux forum, and there's a guy on there that actually did a little bit of programming and work trying to decode the data that's actually on these, because they are in a particularly weird format. As we originally suspected, there's no sectoring on them. It's literally just one track. So there's like 79 tracks or something on disk with no sectors. So the only way we can read these is with a cryoflux, and then we need some software to sort of try and decode them. Now, unfortunately, the disks are particularly degraded. So the data that we're actually getting off with the cryoflux is pretty poor, to be fair. There's all sorts of, yeah, you get these, I don't know whether you can see on there, that little white patch. I'm not quite sure. People say it's mould, but I'm not convinced it's mould. I think it's some kind of oxidization of the sort of the actual magnetic surface. But anyway, you get these white patches, and it basically means you can't read. Now, I did do some experiments taking the disc out of the sleeve and cleaning it with alcohol, and that did seem to improve things significantly. So I've had this sat to one side, thinking at some point I'll start slitting all of these discs open, taking the actual disc out, cleaning it, and then trying to read it with cryoflux. But because we don't have a working paint box anyway, it's kind of like being sat on the back burner, not really doing anything with it. But most of these are the fonts from the paint box. There are some other discs, but they are not paint box discs. So there's two types of paint box disc in here. there's a font. So if you had an original Quantel paint box and you wanted a particular font, you would speak to Quantel and say, I want, I'm not sure what that font's called, MLSH Universal 57 Condensed, this particular disc. You'd say to Quantel, I want this particular font, and they would license it to you, write it onto a floppy disk, you'd send it out to you, and then you'd put this in your paint box and copy the font onto your system. So that's one type of disk. The other type is the one that I really wanted to recover, which is possibly not in this box. Let's see if it is. Yeah, so you can see we've got all sorts of Universal 65 bold, Monotype Times New Roman, but there's one particular type of disc that we need if we ever try and get that paint box working, and that is the brush master disc, which is used when you set up the system and you've got a blank hard disk. You have to copy the brush files from a master floppy disk onto the hard disk, which then the paint box needs when the system starts up. And unfortunately those disks are they're particularly bad in terms of being able to read them, so that is a bit of a problem. But maybe I'll start looking at that again, especially as we trying to read that original Quantel paintbox hard disk, but you never know. Eekpie mentioned delamination. Yes, it doesn't look like delamination. It's, as I say, it's like some people say it's mould, because it sort of creeps out in like a spidery thing on the actual disc surface. But you know, I'm not convinced it's mould. I think it's some kind of oxidization thing. But even the non-paint box discs. Yes, actually, I was going to mention that the other discs that were in the system, we speculated were for an Aston character generator. Interestingly, when I was at Vintage Radio last week, when I picked up his Quantel paint box, he's got a couple of Aston character generators there, and we had a bit of a chat, and he basically thinks that they are probably for an Aston character generator, and they're probably auto cues from EastEnders, because they all had EastEnders episodes on them. Whether or not we'll be able to read those, I've no idea, because those are hard sectored floppy disks, and it's even more problematic trying to read them. So they've just been sat in the box doing nothing. Eekpie Olga, we've been on the same track all day. So yes, a lot of the original paint box stuff, it is all still ongoing. It's just very, very slow progress. I think what it is, I don't want to dive into something and screw something up part way through. I'd rather take my time and get it done properly, rather than just pile in with a load of enthusiasm and not make any progress and end up causing more of a problem, which is probably why I'm taking my time doing these floppy disks, because you're only going to get a couple of chances to read these disks, and if you do it the wrong way, that's it, they're gone for good. So does the Aston character gen make auto cue video? Steve from Vintage Radio did mention that they did sometimes use a character generator to create auto cue. It's something he mentioned. So yeah, it's a distinct possibility. So what you would normally use the Aston for is to create the titles at the end of a program. But yeah, they could easily be adapted to make auto cues. So yeah, it's a distinct possibility. And the fact that those other discs have EastEnders episodes on, and pages and references to scripts, then yeah, it's probably auto cue. So any other questions then? What other things have been happening with the original paint box? Not a lot. Yeah, slow progress on that, but always knew it would be. Actually, that's worth mentioning with the Adapt project, talking about the Quantel paint box and stuff on their program. Maybe it'll generate a bit of interest to get more people involved with restoring that original DPB 7000 Quantel paint box. You know, could generate a bit of interest. Maybe even do I have wondered about doing a crowdfunding campaign to get a bit of money together to try and you know, get a bit of funds to help restore it. No worries, CP Rosu, or CP, I can't remember how you said to pronounce that now. You have a good day, and I'll catch you later. So I think that's pretty much drawing to this stream to a close. I think. Obviously, if anything interesting happens, I will do a video or live stream or do something. There's always something happens at least a couple of times a month. Okay, thank you everybody for watching and listening. I will catch you very, very soon indeed with more interesting stuff. Thanks everybody. See you soon.